Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to. Man, I am starting off fire. Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to Matt's Fishing Mission. Today, I figured let's go over a complete gear review. Everything I'm throwing, everything I'm using to both fish and film, and how I put the videos together. So, with that in mind, let's jump right in. Before the video begins, make sure you guys hit that like button and, of course, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. At the end of this video, we've got a couple giveaways to announce, so make sure you watch through to the end or in the middle. There might be some parts snuck in there. We've got something for you guys in the Cincinnati area, and then we've got something for everyone as far as some giveaways. So stay tuned. I hope you guys enjoy this video.
What a monster.
All right, so next up is spinners. I like to throw spinners when the water is a little bit on the dirtier side because obviously the spoon gets that flash kind of going on the water and helps attract fish a little bit more. So you can fish everything from a big giant spinner with like a double leaf, something that's got heavy weight to it, something you can even cruise near the bottom, and you can see this one here, I definitely cruise towards the bottom. Bump it off of rocks, keep it low, keep it slow, and find anything that's really, I guess, you're trying to get that hard to get active bite, more of a reaction strike, swimming it right by them with that bigger bait. And then you can fish all the way down to these little tiny little, $1.99, $1 spinners. And one thing I would suggest, if you're fishing with a spinner bait and you're either missing bites or maybe they're grasping onto your paddle tail trailer and you're missing that bite, is throw a stinger hook on there. If you're not familiar with stinger hooks, a stinger hook essentially just hooks right on to the end of the built-in hook, and it kind of gives you a double hook situation. So there are plenty of opportunities for that fish to come up and grab that stinger hook. And yeah, it's really key. I would invest in a couple packs of stinger hooks. Throw them on each one of your spinner baits if you're finding that you're not getting a really good hookup ratio. So these are everything from large to medium to small size spinners. And we've got a range of colors. You can get gold, silver, or even some of the painted and metallic flecked blades on them. You've got Colorado blades and leaf blades and all these different styles of blades. Really, you're just looking for something that's got good action. You really want the blades to spin well in the water. I've picked up some cheap spinners that the blades just don't spin very well, and those get tossed aside. That's the key action in a spinnerbait, is you want that blade to really attract those fish. It looks like almost like a miniature school. And also the trailer is very key too. All right, so for a larger trailer on some of your bigger spinners, I like to throw a larger style paddle tail in there. So with these larger spinners, and you'll see what I mean by really getting a good trailer bait on there, is you've got that flashy attractant there. Now, if you're getting strikes and they're grabbing onto the paddle tail here, and you're missing the bite, that's where that extra stinger hook, because that's going to give you another couple inches of hookup length essentially. So that way, if they're grabbing just to the end of that tail, if they're just trying to nip at it, you may get that fish hooked up. So stinger hooks and your trailers are the key things to pair up with a good spinner bait. Now, if you're fishing a smaller spinner bait, I wouldn't even discount going with a smaller trailer like a crappie jig. Maybe not something too terribly small, but if you get like a white-tailed grub, one of these, and you take one of your smaller spinners, and let's hook that up so you guys see the presentation on that. So when you're throwing that, you've got this, you've got that tail giving that good action. The smaller spinner baits, you're probably not gonna have to worry about, or trusting that the fish is gonna bite that, the end of that, the stinger hook. I really wouldn't put a stinger hook on one of the smaller or miniature sized spinners. Really won't have an issue with hookup on some of those smaller spinners, but some of the bigger ones where you really have to get that fish to make an open mouth bite on some of those larger spinners, stinger hook might be a good call there. So what I like to do, again, contrasting colors, I like to personally throw a contrasting trailer to the skirt color of the spinner baits that I'm throwing. A lot of people like to match them. I like the contrasting color because, again, fish, especially bass, those predator fish, really key in on contrasting colors. So that's what I like to do. All right, jigs, chatterbaits. Let's go over those. I would probably say to someone, if you were absolutely struggling to get a bite, throw on a jig. Whether it's a shaky head jig or a football jig, throw on a jig and a good creature bait trailer, and you should have a surefire way to get bit. Fish that are stubborn are typically near the bottom and hanging out near the bottom, and they're not really wanting to get that active strike. A jig is a surefire way to bring them out of their cover, out from under a log, behind a rock, wherever they're waiting in ambush or just chilling out. A jig is a surefire way to go. Now, if you're not familiar with chatterbaits are essentially like a weighted jig, but it's got that blade in front of it. These are great for cutting through grass. So if you're fishing in an area that's got not too like soupy a grass, and especially in the southern states, you get that low-lying grass. Chatterbaits are a great way to cut through that because you can swim it in those areas where those fish are kind of hunkered down in that thick, mucky grass, and that chatterbait will just kind of cut right through it. You can feel it kind of hesitating a bit in the grass, and you can just give it a quick pull, and that blade usually will slice through that grass, and you can get through it. And that's typically when you're going to get one of those reaction strikes. Just like when you thump a jig off of a log, that fish hears that commotion, it senses that something's trying to escape, and that's when you get that bite. There are obviously several ways to rig up a jig. I found that these jigs that have that pivoting head on them, and it allows that bait, once you're sitting on bottom, to really have that kind of swiveling action. I really like these style jigs. These are fun to throw, and I've got a few that I haven't even thrown yet, but I picked up a handful of them, and these are just so great. I picked them up in like a PBJ and all different kinds of colors. So these are great because once that hits on bottom, that current and just that light action is going to allow whatever creature bait or worm that you're throwing, soft plastic, to stand up. And some other things to consider when you're throwing a jig, especially if you're working a little bit slower, is to take that jig and rig it up with plastic that's a little bit more buoyant. And there are a bunch of different plastics out there that have different buoyancy and float rates and sink rates. So something like a saltless Senko will be something that's going to typically be a little bit more buoyant. And I wouldn't discount throwing something that's even really big, like one of the extra long worms, something that's like 7 to 8 inches on that. Especially if you're trying to get into like a bed fish, that's really, you want to agitate that fish and get him to come up off that bed. That's just my opinion. That's the way I like to pair those up. So those are jigs and chatterbaits. Let's check out some flies. There are all different kinds of flies for all different kinds of situations. Most of the flies that I get are traditionally not your dry flies, those really lightweight flies for like trout fishing. I'm in more of a smallmouth situation, so I like bass flies or things that are geared a little bit more towards bass. Now, of course, I've got some of the flies that are, just the little tiny ones. I've got some in there for your trout, stuff like that. But we've also got some just absolutely awesome bass flies. Some of these got a little weight up front in the head, really colorful, and when they hit the water, they just got that really nice bug style presentation. Some of these feathered jigs and feathered flies, really fun to throw. And again, I really like these high contrasting colored jigs and flies. Now, fly fishing is something that I have not had a lot of experience in, and I do have a fly rod set up, and that is one of my absolute primary goals of 2020 is to get these worked in more to the mix on the fly rod setup. Really, if you're struggling to find confidence in a bait or a style of fishing, my suggestion would be to only take that gear, only take that setup, and fish it with no other options, because then you're just forced to make yourself good at that style of fishing. So one of my fishing adventures coming up, one of my fishing missions is going to be a fly fishing mission, just so I can really kind of master getting down the casting and letting out the line and really getting the style of throwing fly setups. So that's on my bucket list for 2020, is to get that fly fish. My first fly rod and reel fish completed, knocked out. All right. Last, but certainly not least, we've got soft plastics. And being a bass guy, you know that we're going to have a lot of soft plastics. So soft plastics, really, I've got mine divvied out into my creature baits. These are good for pairing up with a jig, fishing Texas, fishing weightless, putting on a swim jig, chatterbait. I mean, you can even take some of these smaller ones and do a drop shot situation with them. Creature baits are really, really fun to fish with. And then you've got your classic Senko style and stick baits. Got a lot of different colors for different situations, different water clarities. I like throwing, probably one of my favorite to throw is a nice dark black and blue with a metallic flake in it. I think those really have a good attracting trait to fish. They stand out on the water. It's got a little bit of flash to it, and I just really enjoy those. And of course, you've got some of your smaller deer, your crappie jig head plastics. I mean, these aren't not going to catch smallmouth bass. This is certainly gonna work in that situation. Jen, what was your PB caught on?
My PB was caught on a jig with a small plastic, a black small plastic.
Yeah, so these aren't not going to catch smallmouth. I believe Jen's PB smallmouth was caught on just something like this. So you can get 2 and 3 and 4 pound smallmouth off of tiny little gear. These are fun to fish. These are good to throw when you're really not worried about maybe losing an expensive jig on the bottom, and you're just throwing those tiny little jig heads and you're willing to kind of go through a bunch. These are perfect because these are inexpensive, and yeah, they're just light, nice gear to throw. And you got everything from grub tail worms to curly tail minnows to the good old classic Helgi, the old Helgramite. Great classic smallmouth soft plastics. And then one thing I need to stock up on is Ned rigs, because smallmouth, I mean, get fished so much. Ned rigs are kind of the first things to go. We've got some flukes. We've got some trick worms. I think we've even got, what do we got? One of the Guggenbait Mondo worms. Those are good. And then just some kind of off-weight worms. One of the funnest ways I like to fish is either a weighted or a weightless wacky, because it gives you can fish it in a fast presentation if you've got it weighted, or you can fish it a little bit slower weightless. And even the weighted gives you the opportunity to fish it both slow and fast. So you can give it that up, up, down, and just let it pause and let them try to hit it on that float down. And that's the great thing about a wacky rig, is that you can give it that tap, tap, pause, and just let it flutter back down to the bottom. That's typically when you're going to get your strike. You can also fish a wacky with just the yo-yo action. Bring it all the way to the surface and let it float all the way down. Or with a wacky, you can weight that thing and let it sit at the bottom and then just tap it off the bottom and let it drift back down just a couple feet and keep repeating that action. So I really like throwing the wacky rig. I know Jen really wants to catch a fish on the wacky rig this year. It's one of her goals. So those are all the baits and all the soft plastics and everything we're rigged up with this year. A couple other things I want to show you is some of the things we're going to bring into 2020 for some cool adventures. One of which being is we're going to do some more camping and hiking adventures mixed in. And with that always comes a catch and cook. So we've got a little campfire setup. So how these work is you've got this little box here, and it takes one of these, what are called solid fuel. You pop one of these off, undo it, and you set it right inside that bait there, and you just light it with a lighter, and then you're ready to cook after that. You can get any kind of little camping pan, and this we are just now unboxing. We've not gotten a chance to use this yet, but we got this just small, lightweight camping setup, so you can just set that little fuel burner right on top there, do a little catch and cook for some bluegills or some crappie or whatever you catch that day. You can boil some water, make oats in the morning, whatever you want to do. Nice little setup. It's lightweight. This doesn't weigh much at all. In fact, so this entire setup, let's say with 3 camping fuels, the entire setup, it comes with a plastic cup. We're talking 12 3/4 ounces for this entire setup. So you got the little stove setup, 3 blocks of fuel. You've got a little measuring cup. You got a small little pan. You got the skillet with either a cover like that or a separate pan like that. All set up for 3/4 pounds. So this is a nice, really lightweight catch and cook setup that is not going to be a burden on your pack if you're bringing stuff in. So you can carry this, your sleeping situation, some water, and yeah, it's not really gonna be too heavy to load in and load out. All right, guys. So I told you there'd be a giveaway, and what I wanted to tell you guys is that out in the fishing spots, in the parks, I have already started hiding some of the rocks. So those of you that are around Cincinnati that have been familiar with some of my fishing spots, or if you recognize them all, I'm not going to tell you where I hid them. They're just in some fishing spots. But each of them have the Matt's Fishing Mission, and they've got a little emblem to go find Facebook. So if you find one of these rocks and you're the first person to post this on Matt's Fishing Mission on Facebook, you will be the lucky recipient of your own baitcaster. Yes. So that'll be fun. Also, in an upcoming live stream, I will be giving away baits in little packages to all of you guys. So some of you may win a full baggie of soft plastics. I've got topwater baits to give away. I've got crankbaits. I got lipless. I got regular crankbaits. I've got more soft plastics. I've got some jigs. I've got all kinds of cool stuff to give away to you guys. So be looking out for the next couple of live streams where I'm going to be giving and sending stuff straight to you guys just for hanging out with me and talking about fishing. Well, guys, thanks for hanging out with me. As always, make sure you hit the notification bell, leave a comment and a like. And if you want to see the upcoming live streams when they happen, hit the notification bell and we can sit and chat together. You guys may win some cool stuff. Other than that, I will see you on the next Fishing Mission.